Everybody, to the triumphant return of the Orangebloods Modcast. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Jason Sukamel, Anwar Richardson, Travis Gailey. We might even have Alex in a little bit. He's picking up the kids from school, so he may join us in. But it's the first time we've done a Modcast in a few weeks. Glad to be back. Glad to have everybody with us. Do us a solid. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Get notifications, do all of those things. Shout out to Peyton, first one in the chat today to say what's up. Little bit of a tricky deal because usually we have the shows now set up, so they're scheduled. So today you had to be quick on the draw. There was no scheduled. You couldn't just hop back in. What's up, Mike Torres? Good to see you too. Yes, Chris. It is a three-peat for me today. I've done a few shows between it's Anwar's second. So, we're all chalking up the mileage here. Fellas, this video brought to you, by the way, from Mojo Insurance. Jason, tell everybody about Mojo.
Now turn on your mic.
Hey, I'm a little rusty, guys. It's been a long weekend. All right, Mojo Insurance, dude. First off, it's a can't miss opportunity. Shop your insurance around. I think it's hundreds of companies, the largest in the group in the state of Texas. They shop it around, and it's no skin off your back, man. You send them your information, they're going to shop it around and try to save you money. If they can't, no effort is wasted, no time wasted of yours, but pretty good chance they will save you money on your insurance. Give Mojo a chance, dude. It's a no-lose proposition for you. It's silly to not try it. Mojo Insurance, I used them. Great results. Give Mojo a shot.
And they actually have an Orangebloods section when you go to their website. They've got a special form for members of the website and those that are watching the show. Fill that bad boy up. Let them know that Orangebloods sent you over. They're just dying to save you money. They're dying to hear from you. Thanks to the guys over at Mojo Insurance for being such a great partner of Orangebloods Live. All right, fellas, you guys know the question. I ask this throughout the season all the time. I ask it around the time of the spring game. I'm putting a ball on a tee, and Jason, I'll just start with you. But the question will go for everybody, and we'll go around the room. Like, where's your head at? I think Anwar asked me this question today, as a matter of fact. I'm going to turn it back and ask it to him in a little bit. There's a lot of things that we can talk about. Sarkisian talked to the media today. We're coming out of a scrimmage. We're 12 days away from the opener against Rice, 19 days away from Alabama. So presumably our heads could be just about anywhere, thinking about any number of things related to this team. Given all of that context, Jason, for you, where's your head at?
Well, I was surprised after the first scrimmage, 9 days ago, when we heard the defense won the day. And I think maybe it was on Almar's show on Tuesday when I was on of last week. I said, I want to hear that the offense is more consistent in scrimmage too, the one that happened 2 days ago. Not saying they need to march up and down the field, cut through the defense like a hot knife through butter, but I wanted to hear more consistency. Didn't happen. The defense won the day again, by and large. So I'm a little surprised. I don't know exactly what to make of it. Is this defense much better than maybe we realized or we thought it would be? Catch, that's kind of what you wrote in your 10 thoughts from the weekend. Or is this offense maybe not hitting in sync the way we thought it was? I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, I still think this is a really good Texas team. No injuries. Sark mentioned that, or no real catastrophic injuries. Guys, bumps and bruises, of course. But I think this thing is still trending well. They still got some work to do this week to kind of fine-tune some things, solidify the depth chart and work on some situational stuff. But, I think this thing's about where I thought it would be. I still think this is a championship caliber team that can win the Big 12, should win the Big 12. And I think it's got a really high ceiling beyond just winning the Big 12. I think there's an opportunity, and I'm not saying it's going to happen necessarily, but I think there's an opportunity if the pieces fall in place, if guys stay healthy, that this team has a chance to make a run at something special.
Travis, same question, but also wanted to mix this in. Are you actually getting ready to take new headshots?
No, I got plenty of pretty headshots. Come on, I don't
You don't
need
need
new.
any more. You have a plethora of beautiful headshots.
It does look like an old school Olin Mills studio that he's got going back then. Remember back in the day when you had to go to Olin Mills to get your family portraits.
What do you remember back in the day? I'm going to do that later this week.
It totally looks like it. Go ahead.
At least it's not like the wolf and the howling at the moon background. Although that may be pretty cool if I did that, actually. Now, so one of the things in your 10 thoughts on orangebloods.com, which if you're not a subscriber, you should be. One of the people asked you, buy or sell, you can learn a lot from the preseason. And your response, I thought, was pretty astute. It was, yes, it's true. You buy that. But that it sometimes takes a couple weeks to figure it out, what we've been seeing. And I feel like I'm kind of in that spot right now where we've gotten a lot of information that I think is not what I expected coming into camp. And because of that, I'm more confused in some ways about what to expect out of this team. I came in expecting the offense to tear things up, and that's not been what we've been hearing. And so I think we're going to have to kind of see this play out. And right now, I don't know what to think. I don't know if this is the offense is struggling. I don't know if this is the defense really is what, next level defense, which we kind of thought they may take a next step. But are they really that good? I don't know. So I'm confused now, more now than I was coming into camp. So.
Catch hold of Jason. Catch your phone.
Sorry, I had a coughing attack from sipping a drink of water, and I put myself on mute.
We're a little rusty on this Modcast.
I know. Like, remember that used to be the running
off.
joke. How long would it take for someone to leave themselves on mute? Not long. Once we get the crew back together again. Jerry, no more Rodcast. We all just kind of reached a decision together. Although him more than us, that he wasn't going to do the show anymore. C'est la vie. That's the way it goes. We wish him the best. We will have a new show. We hadn't done a Modcast in a while. So quite frankly, it felt like a good time to do one in the 3:00 hour. But starting tomorrow, this isn't like the new Modcast time frame. Starting tomorrow, we will have a new show. I'll make that announcement really soon, maybe tonight, maybe first thing tomorrow morning, but we're really excited about the direction that we're going on in the show. I think a lot of you will be happy with what we're doing. So that's what's going on there. Anwar, back to you, your head with regards to the Texas football team.
Yeah, I mean, Catch, I think, it's interesting. Hearing Jason and Travis talk is really what's kind of formulated my opinion. Like, I feel like you can tell yourself what you want to believe at this point. I think there's enough evidence. And Sarkisian even talked about this before. He said, like, hey, for every positive story that says, like, we're going to be successful, I can put up another 5 that says that we won't. So he's like, you can put 5 positives, 5 negatives. Travis's point is interesting. It's kind of like, well, when you hear things like Sarkisian talking today about the drop passes in the scrimmage. Well, Jason and I have been in practice, and Jason, you would agree, like, we saw passes being dropped when we were out there for the portions of practice that we were watching. So, you tell yourself, like, okay, he said that they made so much progress and that happened. And I thought, well, I felt like we've been seeing that a lot. And I feel like that was kind of the knock on, at least one receiver coming into the season. So there is that, like you said, Travis, you're correct. You will probably want to see this offense kind of executing at a high level and feeling really good. Like, man, they were making a lot of plays. Like, what we heard on Saturday, and then what was reaffirmed today was that, hey, from the offense, between the 20s was effective. But then when they got down to the red zone, they just really weren't able to score. And then they had to settle for field goals. So again, defensive victory, a little bit of a struggle on the offense. So you could tell you, but then that being said, if we heard that the offense was lighting it up and, Quinn threw 5 touchdowns, you say, oh my God, this defense is horrible. So like, where do you go? Like, where's your head at as relates to that thing? I think Catch you summed up perfectly this morning when you said it's kind of a zero-sum game as relates to it. I'm still going to go with a little bit of benefit of doubt here, Catch, as far as everything is concerned, giving the benefit of doubt as far as like the progress in the areas and that that we've seen, like as far as, Quinn is concerned or receiver drops or anything to that effect. I think the encouraging thing, especially hearing from Sark today, again, a lot of things that we had over the weekend, it was good to hear, confirmed as far as what that front seven looked like in the scrimmage, and he was able to point out some guys. So you feel good that, at least the defense is going good. And then you just want to make sure, all right, as long as the offense can do their part when the times comes, then we'll see what the season looks like.
Real quick, El Presidente coming into the super chat. You guys can always get your super chat questions in. We love those.
Yes,
no
sir.
time to panic on the offense yet. Now, if Texas doesn't cover the 35, I love that El Presidente has his head fully, like he's fully focused on the things that matter. If they don't cover the 35 against Rice, then hit the spread limit on I-35.
Speed limit, he said. Yeah, speed limit.
Oh, speed limit.
Yeah.
I just thought we were still gambling. I was like, let's prize picks up this bad boy. Sound the alarm bells. Would that be 4 alarms? Hey, thank God, not a 5 alarm. And set me up a GoFundMe page. Wow. Oh, Presidente, come on now.
So El Presidente likes to he likes to gamble a little bit, Catch. He'll send me certain things I like to gamble. So yes, that's happened. That's happened. By the way, what I'm gonna do, Catch, I haven't really talked to you about, but they're gonna do with El Presidente's picks in the upcoming season. Presidente's picks on Friday and see what he's got for us.
I feel like a Jason Alex bet could be formed here based on the success
another
of El
one?
Presidente's picks.
None of those guys are ever going to pay. So I don't want
Hey, I haven't lost yet. I'm already talking about
Hey, you guys don't know this. We settled the bet on Thursday.
I saw that on the board or read it or whatever. Like, I must have missed that when I was dealing with my son. I need a very quick recap of what happened.
I brought Dustin on to House Divided with Chad.
Okay.
And
that's right. I knew he was coming on. Okay. Yeah.
And he officially settled the last remaining vote that he votes in favor of Jason. Alex owes everybody lunch. Not you, Travis. You weren't in on that show.
I'm out.
And it's about only $20 when Quinn Ewers takes that first snap in the season opener. Anwar, when you were reading El Presidente and Anwar, you said he likes to bet. My ears perked up. I'm like, all right, El Presidente, you and me are going to be making some bets, but I think El Presidente might be a little smarter than me, so I don't want to bet against El Presidente.
You want to keep it
I might lose
low-hanging fruit? Fair enough.
No offense, Alex.
Well, just so you know, Jason, he bets a lot of money, so you don't want no parts of what he's betting.
Well, there's that too. Yeah.
So let me tell you where my guy's head is at today, and it's a little bit more narrow. So I'm with all of you guys. There's a real interesting conversation to be had about this football team. And I think the thing is the scrimmages and the practice actually do give us an idea of kind of where the team is at. So it might be when the team comes out against Rice in 12 days that it might not play out that way in the game, right? Texas should just pummel Rice. But maybe when we get against Alabama, that game may turn into a defensive slugfest. Alabama doesn't have a quarterback. That whatever we think of Texas in the offense, it's ahead of where Alabama is, where they got 3 quarterbacks taking reps with the ones, and the guy who will probably start isn't the guy that led the ones to its only touchdown drive against the Alabama defense on Saturday. They have their own concerns. My focus today, Anwar, I can't get past reading your update from Sarkisian's talk with the media earlier today. Okay. That when Sarkisian was asked to name the guy that he thinks is their best tackler, he said Malik Muhammad.
Yes.
And it feels a little bit like him saying that CJ Baxter is one of their 3 best blockers. Mm-hmm. It seems to be screaming, oh, so you guys can put him on the field and you ain't got no issues.
Yeah.
And I feel like Malik Muhammad, because of the position, because it was assumed that, he can have a year to grow up. Plus he's coming, from a school district that sometimes the level and quality of play, it takes a year to adjust. Whatever reasons, I don't remember anybody saying that by the end of August, Malik Muhammad would be, of all of the freshmen on campus, kind of a buzzword. Makes a play in the show me scrimmage, makes plays in the depth chart scrimmage. And then 2 days after the depth chart scrimmage, Sarkisian is talking about his tackling ability, which isn't the number one thing that he's really been displaying in practice. He's been a playmaker. He gets his hands on the ball. He gets pick sixes. He's just always around the football in a way that allows him to make plays. Texas has got Terrence Brooks and Ryan Watts, two really good corners. And yet I can't help but think that Malik Muhammad is a real star in the making.
Mm-hmm.
Anwar, let me ask you this question. Do you remember the last cornerback? Because I remember Caden Stearns made a really big impact early in his career and was a buzzword back in 2018 when he joined the program. Mm-hmm. Can you remember the last cornerback that 2 weeks into his career just kept showing up and being talked about as potentially that dude?
Holton Hill comes to mind, I believe.
Yeah, that was the one.
I think Holton Hill was a guy that we were hearing a lot about, probably a little bit more than Chris Boyd at that time. Because, when they decided, because they were going to go with the youth movement, but I feel like we heard a lot about him. Right? Jason, you would agree? Is that the last? I feel like that's the guy for me.
Yeah, that would have to be. And honestly, I don't remember hearing as much about Holton 2 weeks into his career as we've heard about Manny Muhammad, if I'm being honest. But I think in terms of true freshmen, it probably was Holton.
And then beyond that, like if I go beyond Holton Hill, I guess my point is this doesn't happen all the time. It's not like every year. I feel like receiver. I feel like 2 years ago, everybody was buzzing about Xavier Worthy, and for good reason. Yeah. This year, everybody's been buzzing about A.D. Mitchell. Like I feel like there are positions where this thing has happened, but to have and they don't need Malik Muhammad to be one of their two best corners. They don't. They're good at cornerback. That he's just elevating and constantly making plays and forcing himself to be in the discussion. It just feels like something that should be noted as this guy might be special. That don't feel like this is hyperbole and that we're hyping this thing up. He was a badass recruit. Everybody keeps mentioning him in every practice and scrimmage report. And today his coach, weirdly, I thought for sure the answer would be Jalen Ford, right? Yeah. Your All-America linebacker? Yes. He clearly wanted to talk about Malik Muhammad, and he used the question about who's your best tackler to get some Malik Muhammad discussion in there. He has my attention.
And I'll be honest with you, Catch. When I was going back through it, I replayed it 3 or 4 times, the question, because I thought maybe he was asked for young tackler, and I just missed it, right? I was like, maybe it was young. Because that's what it meant. And I'm like, I'm just it was just tackler. It was like, it was across the board. And, that's what he went with. But Catch, I almost feel like in this camp, the guys you inherit become your guys. So I always get that. But I feel like the Sark guys are really like, when Sark has an opportunity to talk about the Sark guys, Malik Muhammad, that's come up. Derek Williams, we've heard that name. Leona LaFau, we've heard that name a little bit more recently. Like those guys, the CJ Baxters of the world, like to your point, when Sark is asked, who are your best blockers on the team? And he goes, Jonathan Brooks, CJ Baxter, and Keelan Robinson does a really good job. Well, we know football, you ain't getting on the field as a running back unless you could consider one of the top blockers. Like that's it. That's game over at that point. Like everybody else, you fill in a role. I feel like when he has an opportunity to talk up his guys, he's taking advantage of it. It doesn't mean he won't speak up to Vondre Sweat, which he spoke about today. He was asked about, who one of his best pass catchers was. He said Jordan Whittington. But I think behind the scenes, Catch, I think he's been really, really happy with these young guys, the guys that they've been recruiting and developing. Jonte Cooks of the world. He mentioned all the receivers as well, like the young receiver. Like if I go back through this list of guys standouts, I feel like most of the people he mentioned were the young guys.
All right. You mentioned Leonga Lafau, man. That dude's name, he's not getting the kind of buzz that Malik Muhammad's generating or even CJ Baxter. It's not an everyday conversation, but every time we check with sources, right, about a scrimmage or something, it's like, yeah, he caused a fumble or he had a big hit on JT Sanders and broke up a pass or forced a fumble. So, he was a guy that I think maybe was undervalued coming in this recruiting class. He was overlooked by Anthony Hill and all the other linebackers. But, boy, man, Leonga Lafau really seems to be hitting his stride early on. I think that sounds like maybe one of the more pleasant surprises of these young bucks that are showing out would be Leonga Lafau.
Here's the question I have, and maybe this is better served when Alex gets on. How much rotation are we actually going to see in the DBs or even the linebackers with Leonga Lafau? I mean, it feels like there wasn't a lot of rotation at that position last year. Now, I know Sark said the other day, playing at 2:30 in the afternoon heat, he's going to need 10 DBs. So maybe Rice, you will see a lot of that, but I don't know that that's going to be the best representation of what we're going to see week in and week out. Do they rotate these guys in a lot?
Well, he said today, he did say today, right, Omar? He said, like, hey, man, when they're going ones versus twos versus ones, it's almost hard to see the difference. So,
yeah.
I feel like they have quite a bit of confidence in these backups where I don't think they're going to be hesitant to throw them to the wolves in a game like Alabama, like maybe we've seen in the past. I genuinely believe they have confidence in their depth at a lot of these positions. But again, Omar, you were there. You probably have a
no. I mean, there's two because there's two parts of that conversation. Because yes, he does everything you guys are both saying is true, right? He has talked about 2:30 versus Rice. They're going to have to play a lot of guys. It's going to be really hot, so on and so forth. But I also think there's reality of rotating a bunch of guys and 10 guys versus Rice is different than rotating them versus Alabama, right? I mean, they're not going to do a hockey line of rotations and doing that against Bama. Like, I think Bama is when the whole thing gets shortened up. And I think Bama is when, yes, it's great to have certain guys and certain depth. Even one of the things I asked him today, Catch, was, hey, does having this kind of depth give you a little bit more freedom when it comes to putting guys on special teams? And it's kind of like, yeah, like before, now you can play some of these younger guys on special teams because you don't feel like there's that much of a drop-off. So you may see a lot more of those guys there. But, when it's all said and done, like, yes, Rice is one thing, Wyoming is one thing, but when they get into the money games, like, that's where you're probably going to see it shorten up a little bit.
Well, and look, I think the cornerback position is one position that they feel really good about their depth. I mean, I can't remember which show it was. I think it might have been yours, Onwar, but if they were forced to play Gavin Holmes and Malik Muhammad as starters in a game, I think they don't really blink. So, Texas's best teams, that the cornerback was a position where you would see some rotation. I can remember Aaron Ross being the rotational guy on a national championship season with Terrell Brown. And then the next year he's the Thorpe Award winner. You're going to see Malik Muhammad might be their best corner. And we just might not know it yet because he's only, 2-3 weeks into his first August camp with the team. But in 5 years, 10 years from now, we may look back and go, well, yeah, of course, Malik Muhammad, because he's a Pro Bowler. And you just kind of talk that way. All of those guys that's what super blue chips look like. And he's performing at a really high level. I think there are some positions where you can see rotation, Travis, more likely than others. I think with Lafau, it's a reminder that outside of Jalen Ford, there's not a lot settled at that linebacker position. You know that David Benda is one of the linebackers, and you know that Maurice Blackwell has been running as kind of the Diamante Tucker Dorsey third linebacker, that weak side linebacker, whenever they play three linebackers on the field at the same time. Is Lafau pushing Maurice Blackwell out of a spot? Because there's not enough equity built up there that a job couldn't be taken over. What's going on with David Benda? Where's Anthony Hill in the equation? We're hearing a lot about him as a pass rusher. It seems like that's been the buzzword with Anthony Hill lately, that off the edge, he's really impressive. Moving forward, attacking, he's really impressive. it's funny. Those two conversations just feel different to me. Like the cornerback position is loaded with, I think, plus players that you can feel really good about no matter what the game situation. But we don't even really talk about Gavin Holmes, but he's had a really good camp. He's a guy that's been mentioned as performing well. And really, given that the defense has kind of controlled the offense in both of the scrimmages, it stands to reason that the cornerbacks for both the first and the second team defense have held their own, because they're not getting cheap plays really in the passing game against these DBs. They're making them really work for it. And these are really good wide receivers. Though, Travis, when I look at that linebacker position, I don't know what to expect. So when he says LaFau today, I actually do wonder, like, what does that mean against Rice in ways that I don't quite with some of the other players?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, against Rice, I don't know that that's the barometer that we're going to need to judge. I assume damn near all 85 men are going to be out on the field against Rice. But I do wonder what it means. Are we going to see – I guess big picture, I wonder, is he going to have a redshirt burn this year or not? I mean, he's going to get in 4 games at least, because it sounds like he's already proven he's worth at least those 4. But are we going to see him rotating in front of a Maurice Blackwell or a David Benda? I mean, Anthony Hill's going to play a lot. He's clearly not going to redshirt. I don't know what, when I put out the depth chart in my column last week, when I was talking about that, the one pushback I got about Leonga LaFau from Alex was he was like, look, they don't rotate a lot of guys at linebacker. That's just not how Choate and PK do things. So he's like, I don't know what kind of playing time you can really expect from him. And I still included him because he's got so much buzz and because it's a guy that we just weren't expecting much from. So for him to step up and his name's out there like it is, I think is noteworthy, and it's something we need to really pay attention to. This is one of those carryover from camp things that probably has some legs. But do they trust a rookie linebacker who doesn't have super freaky athleticism like Anthony Hill in Tuscaloosa? I mean, Sark said today, like, when Anthony Hill makes mistakes, his instincts are so strong, he's still getting a hand on the ball. He's still getting a tackle, even if he takes the wrong blitz or something like that. He's making plays because his athleticism and his instincts are so strong. Clearly, they trust him. Do they trust Leonga LaFau to go into Tuscaloosa? And that's where I'm like, I don't know. This still feels like a borderline red shirt. If there's no injuries, he could end up with a red shirt this year.
I
if
think
there are injuries, I think they trust him.
Not only do I think he plays, here's the secret sauce here, Travis, and I know Catch will probably jump in. Give a second, Catch, which is the thing that LaFau has done, which is going to make sure he gets on the field, is that he's causing turnovers. And he's getting them. So in 2 scrimmages, like in the last scrimmage there, he recovered a fumble and that was there. So he was around the ball. Sark noted that he caused a fumble during the scrimmage last week. So you want to know how Manny Muhammad is getting the attention? Because you get a pick 6, because you do these other things that create turnovers. Yeah. Their big thing has been they want turnovers, guys that could create it. And LaFau is in 2 weeks has been out there, has been around the ball, or is creating turnovers. Like that's it. Like you can do that and you get that kind of attention. Check the box. I hear what Alex is saying, but that's how you check the box. That's how you get your coach to talk about you that, week in and week out when you're out there creating turnovers. So no, I believe he'll be on the very least of special teams, and that will burn it. But if you're talking about if he's going to be traveling, I would highly anticipate he's traveling.
Well, I don't know about traveling, yeah, but is he going to be inserted into the game?
He's going to play in the first quarter against Rice.
I don't care about Rice. Rice is one of those that
he's going to play in the first half against Alabama.
Okay, that's what I care about. If he does that, then they trust him full bore.
But here's
that says a lot about the kid.
Jason, how many linebackers on this team do you truly trust right now?
One?
Yeah. Jalen Ford is trusted. Right. Who else has earned trust?
Nobody. I mean, honestly, I trust one. I mean, it's Jet Bush. Does that count? Can you throw him there?
No.
I mean, I'm looking at their depth chart. I mean, Blackwell, Benda, no. I mean, you got the freshman after that. So, I mean, there's truly one that you can, trust game in and game out.
And Anwar, I think if you said Jalen Ford, David Benda, Blackwell, trust those guys explicitly, then I think this conversation is a little bit different. I think that you don't quite know what you're getting from those guys. They're not creating the turnovers that LaFau is. I think it does give him an opportunity to play early at linebacker, because I don't know that if they want playmakers, I don't know that he's not a guy that needs to be on the field if that's what they're searching for.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what it was. And again, so when I did my report on Orangebloods, right, Catch, I did a lot of from the scrimmage recap. Now he was asked specific questions, so when he was asked something, I know he gave an answer, but I went from almost like the unsolicited portions, right? And now, so when it's an unsolicited is sometimes more telling than solicited, right? Because that's the message he wants to get out. That's the message he wants to get across. That's the message he wants everyone to know, which is, I just came in. It's like you come home from, day of work, whatever. And when you start and open your mouth and you tell your wife, guess what happened today, honey? ... That's the message that you want to get across. Now, she may ask you questions, and that's totally different. But you come home, and this is your agenda because this is what's important. You want to communicate. And these are the things that he was communicating. LaFau was one of these guys that, once again, unsolicited, he just felt the need to mention. And when you're unsolicited, just mentioning that's why I perk up. I take notes. I pay attention. I'm like, this is important. You knew like this. You wanted this out there, not only for him, but for everybody else to know. So with you, that he's a guy that I definitely think is crossed over.
Jelani McDonald, can you give me the context of his comments about him today? Because he's a guy you're starting to hear a little bit of buzz from. But Travis, that might be a guy that I instinctively see him through the prism that you're seeing LaFau. Like, does we always hear guys in camp that pop, that the coaches will mention names, but are they playing against Alabama? Are they going to play more than 4 games? Like, I don't know. Like, so give me it, because he brought McDonald up today. So what was the context with that? Did that come out on his own, or did somebody have a McDonald question?
No. So he was asked specifically, like, hey, who's the guys that maybe have surprised you from July until now, right? And so he goes into, basically talks about, hey, there's a lot of guys who were freshmen that arrived when they got here, back in January. And so you've been able to work with those guys and those guys. And it goes, and then sometimes when you got the guys who are coming in July, you just don't know what to expect from them. But he talked about basically that's how he went into Jelani McDonald being a guy like, hey, he hasn't been here on campus, but he's been able to do this and that since he's arrived, so he it says that, how impressive he's been. The thing that impressed him the most was Jelani's football IQ. Obviously that entails being able to pick up things and so on and so forth. But this is not the first time like McDonald's has been mentioned, because last week, Catch, he also mentioned, McDonald being in the mix as far as like the nickel spot is concerned. When he said they were 4 deep in that nickel spot, McDonald was the name that was in there. So as a guy who could either play, corner or safety. So feeling like that. So the McDonald, this is not the first time this has come up. It's just been one of these like, oh snap, reminders for him for start like that. This guy is really good. So that's how that name came up. Again, general question, and that's the guy that he focused in on.
Anwar, just to continue the conversation of what Sark talked about today. And by the way, thanks for watching the Orangebloods Modcast. Myself, Jason, Anwar, Travis holding down the thing. If you're wondering about what's going on with our normal Monday through Friday, 3:00 routine, today is the Modcast. We will have a new show announcement that will begin tomorrow in the 3:00 hour, either later on tonight or tomorrow, but just giving you guys a heads up. If you're just tuning in and you missed anything at all, making some changes taking place. Sometimes that happens in this business. We're really excited though about what we will be having debuting tomorrow at 3:00. And oh, by the way, I was just looking, give us some likes. I don't want to hit you over the head and be like, ask us for likes every single minute of the show, but hit the like button. there's like 300-ish in the room right now. You can hit the thumbs up button real quickly while you're listening to the show. Offense, Anwar.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like he went out of his way to make sure that he complimented Quinn. That if the offense wasn't getting the job done at the level they want to, didn't sound like he felt like it was a Quinn issue, but he mentions they got to catch the ball better, that's one of the things. And he made sure to say, when I say that we need to catch the ball better, I'm not talking about the babies on campus. This isn't a freshman wide receiver issue. And then when I look for standouts on the offensive side of the ball, felt like there were about 10 guys on defense that he talked about, and I didn't quite sense that on offense. So don't let me paint a picture as someone who wasn't there and is just reading your notes.
No.
Do I have my finger on the pulse of like how it went down, that there just wasn't a lot of compliments directed at an offense that he seemed to concede needs to be playing a little bit better?
So yes, and so I'll set it up like this, Catch. Kind of how I usually say it on my show. Sometimes it's not what people say; it's what they don't say. It's the things that are omitted are usually the things that kind of make your ears perk up. So yes, he did talk about how Quinn was, and from kind of like a composure standpoint, how he is and how effective that is, kind of like a calming presence because he's a little bit more comfortable with the offense. He did mention, that Xavier Worthy had some spectacular catches and looks good at times over the weekend, something that we have reported as well about one of the one-handed grabs that he had as he was falling down. So Xavier Worthy looked, pretty good. Of course, he feels good about AD Mitchell when he was asked about them. But the one thing with area that he hasn't really talked about a lot, whether it was today or previously, he hasn't talked about the offensive line. Like we've heard the flip side, which has been the defense has been doing well. We've heard the defense has been doing great and getting in the backfield and how they're really happy with the front seven. And beforehand, we heard that they were 8 deep, but we haven't heard a whole lot of, offensive line went out and asserted their will. Offensive line went out and they had their way. Like that's something we hadn't heard. Look, Catch, we heard about Gunnar Helm today. Like for the upkeep time, for at least it has to be the second or third time or fourth time. I don't know what the number is over the last couple of weeks, but I've heard is another Gunnar Helm sighting, right? And about what Gunnar Helm has been able to do and how excited they are about Gunnar Helm. So that has happened, but we haven't heard about, this guy, Christian Jones is holding it down there at the right tackle position. I hadn't heard about the other guys on them. And we know Kelvin Banks is Kelvin Banks. But from an offensive standpoint, the one thing we have heard is that the offensive line has been having trouble with this defensive line. Now, is that something that that carries on to the season? Is that somewhat of just kind of an anomaly? Is that just a practice thing? We don't know. But if you're talking about things that we've heard, sure. But there has been sometimes when Quinn hasn't been doing as well, hasn't been because of him. It's because of the people around him, whether it's receivers running the wrong routes, offensive line not playing that well. And so that's one of those things that kind of catches your attention. And then you just take a mental note and say, all right, let me write that down, and I'll just file that away for future reference.
Jason, what's your response to that?
I'm not worried about the offensive line. I'm surprised that the defensive line has received the rave reviews it has against this offensive line, but I think the offensive line is going to be good. I think Kyle Flood's guys will be ready when the bell rings. I'm not worried about that at all. I would have expected to hear more about them, to be clear, but maybe it's one of those things. Honestly, he didn't mention on where you kind of took the words out of my mouth. He mentioned Gunnar Helm. He didn't mention JT Sanders. I don't remember hearing a lot about JT Sanders this spring, not from Sark anyways. It's kind of like, what you got from JT Sanders, right? You know what you've got from this offensive line. I don't have to talk about him every day. Gunnar Helm, I think today, what he said today was just like, he just shows up. He's just consistent, not flashy necessarily, but I thought it was a nice kind of, just understated compliment. Just like, hey, we can rely on Gunnar Helm. He's going to show up and he's going to do his thing and be consistent. But to the point of the offensive line, Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I mean, you'd like to hear, yeah, man, that offensive line is dominating the way we expected they would. But then we'd be sitting here bitching about the defensive line, right? So I'm just not worried. I'd rather be hearing about the defensive line performing well and not hearing much mention about the offensive line if I'm a fan, because I just wouldn't be too worried about the offensive line. I think Kyle Flood's troops will be ready when that Rice game rolls around, and even Alabama and so on and so forth. They've got good starters across the board. They've got really good depth. I mean, guys that probably could be starting in a lot of other places are going to be on that 2 deep. So I think that offensive line will be just fine.
Travis, same question.
Yeah, I actually am a little worried about it, and specifically when it comes to short yardage run game. I mean, I wrote about this after the spring game where they struggled a little bit in goal line during the spring game to get in. They had to go for it on 4th down to score a touchdown at one point. They didn't look great when it was everybody knows you're going to run the ball. You line up head on head, and you just got to force your way into the end zone. They didn't look great in the spring. And we're not hearing a lot of great news coming out of the fall camp now either. This feels like something that could be an issue during the season, especially when you get to Alabama, which they're going to want to run the ball. That's going to be a tight game all the way into the 4th quarter. So it's one of those, I'm not worried about the tackles, but I am a little bit worried about that middle of that offensive line, and especially when it comes down to the red zone. I think they've got some work to do. That's clearly an issue where they're not shining yet. So you got to wonder, are they going to be able to work their way into form during the season, or is this going to be something that will be an issue throughout the year? Because I do think it's an issue now.
I'm a little surprised by your response, Jason, most only because the interior of that offensive line was a weak spot a year ago. I mean, it was okay at times. I mean, you know, it wasn't the thing that I think kept them from competing for a Big 12 championship. But, you know, when we look at Alex's grades, when we talk about Jake Majors in the middle, he's a guy that constantly is being talked about. Texas fans want him replaced. Think about Hayden Connor. He's not quite a guy that's an all Big 12 level player, or even like maybe honorable mention. We know that DJ Campbell has replaced Cole Hudson, but he's still a guy that's a work in progress. I wrote about this in my column, which I didn't ask you to proofread because you were having the day from hell yesterday.
No, I read it last night.
Okay. I didn't want to assume that you read the 10 thoughts yet, because normally you're the first one to read it, and I didn't ask that of you yesterday while you were, again, in Houston and busy. 2 years ago, NFL player contacts me after a scrimmage, and he's like, that's the best defensive line that I've seen at Texas since Casey Hampton and Big Sean. And I was like, wow, okay. That's a quote I'm going to put in a report. That catches my eye. And then the season started, and it was like, oh, the D-line's not great. The offensive line sucks. This is pre-Kelvin Banks. This is pre all of the guys that really are in the lineup now. There's a part of me that's like, God, is Alfred Collins being talked about all the time? And is Vernon Broughton being talked about all the time? Is Devondre Sweat getting talked about all the time? We have not heard a lot. Correct me if I'm wrong, Anwar. Sark hadn't talked a whole lot about Baron Sorrell. And he has talked a little bit about Ethan Burke, but I don't get the sense that the tackles are a big issue. But it sure seems like inside, a lot of Texas defensive lineman names get mentioned. We're not hearing Sark come out and say, Hayden Connor, that kid has taken the step. We think he's one of the best players on our team. We absolutely feel really good. They're not saying that about any of those guys. I'm not yelling fire, Jason. I promise. I'm just saying I'm probably a little bit more with Travis, where it's just like, I don't know. Skeptical monkey is a little skeptical at this point. What will we see? I don't have any definitive answers. There's no bold hot takes on War. Like I'm not standing on the table and saying, Watch out on the ninth. Watch out on that second weekend in 19 days. Alabama's going to rip through this line. Like, I don't know about all that, but I do have some questions that I suppose won't get answered until we see games, but it does involve the middle of that interior of that offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, there are some question marks. I mean, look, when you're going into red zone exercises, and as Travis is trying to talk about, now we're just talking about mano a mano, right there, and you're unable to score. Well, that says something. There's different components that are involved in that, but short yardage, gains and short yardage on the running back situation, this and that. Like, it's funny. One of the questions we had, I had one on the show before was like, basically the offensive line being the difference why this team could be like super successful in the run game. And it's like, well, we still got to see it. I think someone thought, I think the question was, Catch, I think you were on the show with me too, when it was someone thought like they could be just as successful as Bijan because the offensive line is so good. And I was like, well, Bijan's Bijan. It's a totally different thing. But yeah, they're, like it's like anything, like it's good. Like the defensive line doing good. That's great. But we haven't heard about this line, probably the way we heard about them last year, to a certain degree, about them being kind of dominant at times and taking over games at times. Like, that's what we heard a lot. Haven't heard it. Again, to your point, not the worst thing in the world. It doesn't, like you said, mean that once you get to Alabama that all of a sudden it's just, it's a lot of soul slinging, a lot of flower bringing. That's probably not going to be the case. But yeah, you just want to know, like, what things do they need to tidy up and get cleaned up in order to kind of take that next level or take that next step.
Experience will help that group, though. I mean, Hayden Conner's still young, man. This is only his year, right? I mean, DJ Campbell is, for all intents and purposes, his first real season as a true player and certainly a starter. He's described as a guy who can move people. He's a guy that should be in the red zone, should be effective. Jake Majors, everybody's been wanting to get that dude off the field for 3 years now. He's not going anywhere, people. I get it. You bring up a good point, Catch, when you reference your 10 thoughts, like kind of like we've been saying all this modcast. Is it that this group looks better, or is it their opposing group looks bad? Well, the interior of the defensive line, you're right. Those are the names we've been hearing more about, not the edge guys, the interior guys. So is that because those guys truly have taken that next step? Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton and company, T'Vondre Sweat at the scrimmage, have they taken that next step, or is that a reflection of the interior of the offensive line? Probably a little bit of both, but by and large, I do think the offensive line will be a pretty good unit.
By the way, I wanted to address something in the chat. Randy stuttered saying, Sark is talking about Ethan Burke. Sark was asked about Ethan Burke. I mean, we talked earlier in the show, but there's those things Anwar was saying. There's the things that are just brought up, and then there's things that were asked about. He was asked about Burke, which is why he talked about him being a hard worker, which, that doesn't exactly scream he's a stud right now and ready to set the world on fire. When you get asked about a player and you say, oh, yeah, he's a hard worker. I mean, that's damning with faint praise somewhat. I mean, I'm not taking away from Ethan Burke. He could be a great player eventually, but I don't think he's there yet.
Travis, that sounds like some shit I would say. And you know what? I thought that. I read Anwar's deal, and I was like, God, I rated Ethan Burke really high. And at no point in the Ethan Burke, paragraph that he spit out, he didn't say, oh, Ethan Burke, Anwar, that guy's a Sunday player and maybe a high draft pick. Man, is he talented. It was, I know Sark wasn't, again, it's not what you say. Sometimes it's what you don't say. And yeah, I was kind of hoping in the Ethan Burke thing that he threw in and you should see him rush the passer. Like, he has been getting to the quarterback a lot. Not quite what was said.
You're saying it's kind of like where your kids are trying to work hard on a project and you just say, good job. You've been working really hard on that, guys. Like, I love it. Like, that, say, like, this is awesome. I'm going to sell it. This is going to be amazing. You're just like, you guys worked really hard on that.
Yeah, man. Hey, guys, I love the Modcast today. Thought the chat was great. It's like, oh, I'm glad you like the chat, but I'd like to think that somebody stood out amongst the group of four that you like. Let's do this. I want to completely change the subject. Let's just pick one guy that we could buy stock in, not even for like the long-term future, but we're through two scrimmages. Onward, I know Sark made the scrimmage on Saturday, 2 days before they jump into the first Monday of the football season. How did he present what the scrimmage on this upcoming Saturday, so 5 days away? I kind of thought that would be a little bit of nothing, but it sounds like, before we do this thing, it does sound like it's a little bit more than not nothing, or a little bit more than nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it initially sounded like I thought, oh, it was going to be nothing. And then as it kind of starts to break it down, it's essentially almost, for lack of better terms, a fire drill as far as being prepared for what the season, the game's going to look like. So it's about coming out the tunnel. It's about, being in the locker room. It's about getting used to the pregame routine and the pregame ritual. He described that there's probably like 50 things that are going to throw at them to be prepared for, which is an interesting number to me, of like 50 different things that you got to be prepared for in your pregame and within the game, and things to that effect. Substitutions they're going to work on. So the depth chart will be set by that time.
He said he was going to tell the team the depth chart on Saturday, right?
Because by Saturday, because he said basically everyone needs to know what their roles are. So they're going to need to know, like, the first teamer is going to know I'm doing this. The second teamer is going to know I'm doing this. But the people who are backing up, they need to know what they're going to be doing as well, and what their roles are, not only in practice, game days, things to that effect. So he said we'll have the conversations, by Saturday, that's there. Basically, it's, it'll be said within the position group meetings. They'll give up the depth chart at that point, and they'll just say, hey, you're here, you're here, you're here. You guys, you this, and this. There'll be discussions that if they need to be had, those discussions will be had. But that's kind of where they are as far as that is concerned. And then they'll have the depth chart. So it'll be more of a dress rehearsal than anything else. And then going into, some sort of a practice mode. But it's more of a good dress rehearsal for the Rice game, going into the locker room, coming back out in the second half, like things to that effect. So it won't be something, Catch, that we'll get like a whole lot of information as far as like, ooh, there's depth chart. But no, the depth chart will be set, and that may be just a confirmation of it. But it does become kind of an important thing, because it's the last really dress rehearsal before Rice.
Okay, so Jason, I'm going to come to you on this. Back to you can buy stock in. I just wanted to make sure that there weren't, I think the cake is in the oven for this team for game one, and probably Alabama. Like, I don't know that anybody that hasn't made an impact now is going to have a badass practice on Wednesday and cause the coaches to completely change it up. So with that being established, give me a guy that you would buy stock in. It can be the most obvious answer of all, or it could be in any direction that you want to go in. But getting ready to go into the season, who would you talk about the way that I talked about Malik Muhammad a little bit earlier, maybe?
By buying stock, I want to buy someone that's going to be low, that's going to go up, right?
You can interpret it however you want.
I wouldn't be taking Bijan Robinson of last year's team. I'm not taking Google stock.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what? A guy that I don't feel like we've heard a little bit, and Sark mentioned him today, but he's just mentioned, man, I'm looking at the depth chart on his website. There's like legitimately 15 guys I think I could choose from, but I think I can still get Jalen Catalon's stock pretty low. And I think Catalon's going to wind up being a stud if he stays healthy. I mean, that highlight film someone put out, just the way people talk about him. I mean, you forget what a heat-seeking missile this guy is and playmaker he is. And we talked about they want guys who can cause turnovers. I mean, Jalen Catalon can cause turnovers and get negative yardage plays. And I mean, he's just a leader. He's smart. He communicates well. Sark has talked about. Just works hard. You don't have to worry about anything he does away from the field. I think I can still get Jalen Catalon stock for pretty low. And I think by the end of the year, he might be one of the top players on that defense. The injury thing concerns me a little bit, but high risk, high reward, right? So I'm going to buy stock in Jalen Catalon.
By the way, Jason, just piggybacking off of that was one of the things that Sark wanted to kind of went into, like, he'd be remiss if he doesn't.
He likes that phrase, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does that. He loves "I'd be remiss." Like
He
that,
does not
that
want to
is
be
one of
remiss
his
ever.
you want to make sure he's not remiss if he doesn't mention Jalen. So he kind of went into like the Jalen Catalon talk and talked about his physical, toughness, the attitude that he has. Like, I think Jalen Catalon, I think, Kesh, you and I have said before, anything you get out of Jalen Catalon, it's kind of like playing with the house money. And they feel like they're winning. Sark feels like he's winning with Jalen Catalon with that house money because they feel like, okay, he's healthy, he's ready to go, and he's actually going to be a good starter for them, but they like the physical attention. So just piggyback, just adding to that, Jason, that did come up as well. He would be remiss if he didn't mention Catalon.
We all would be. Thank you, Anwar. you had us all. We were all in a position of remiss, and now we're not. Travis, Catalon's off the board. So
Yeah.
You can go anywhere else, but we've done Jalen Catalon.
Catalon was a good one, too. That was a good pick. And honestly, I kind of wanted to go Jonathan Brooks, but just the lack of chatter has cooled me on him a little bit. I still expect him to be. But the guy I'm going to go with is the Google stock. I'm going with A.D. Mitchell. And this is why. Specifically, I just got through talking about I'm concerned about the red zone running game. The one thing I'm not concerned about in the red zone is the passing game. And it seems like every time we hear about A.D. Mitchell, he's scoring a touchdown in fall camp. That dude is like Chris Carter. All he does is score touchdowns, it seems like. So I'm picking A.D. Mitchell specifically for his red zone touchdown scoring ability. It wouldn't shock me at all if he's the one with the most touchdowns at the end of the season out of all the receivers.
I was about to say, give me your number for him at the end of the season. You're buying stock in him. That means at the end of the season, A.D. Mitchell has 10 touchdowns?
Yeah, I think double digits is attainable for him because it sounds like he's going to be one of the primary targets down there. I mean, look, somebody like Worthy is a stud receiver who's going to score a lot of touchdowns in and of himself, but he's also he's a slider guy. It's harder to body up somebody. He's got to do it with his speed and quickness, which is doable, obviously. I always think about that whip route he ran against OU where he just had left the defender in the dirt. But, I think A.D. Mitchell's someone who can be targeted. Let's go with 10. If you set the over-under at 10 or 9.5, I would take the over.
Okay.
Travis's $1,000 stock's going to go up to $1,050. My $80 stock's going to be like $800. So I'll take my gains on my $80 stock.
This is a reminder that somehow, some way, we might have to do like a late night. By the way, Onward,
cocktails
after
involved.
We're done today, I'm going to be calling you up to double check available. We're going to get the draft established tonight, draft date for the league. We already have had the order established for a couple of weeks, but I'll make sure that I do my commish thing when this show is over. It has been on my brain. Anwar, Catalon, A.D. Mitchell, one offense, one defense off the books. You can buy stock in anybody. You can buy Microsoft, or you can go like penny stocks if you want. Who's in your head?
I got a stock that I think will be better than Jason's.
Wow.
And if Jason is going buy low and high return, I think the guys whose stock I will buy is going to be like one of those like Bitcoin-ish kind of things where you feel like you should have got in at the beginning, and because you didn't get it at the beginning and people were buying it for like 2 cents and now everyone's a millionaire, and like now you try to get in and it's like, $1,000 a share or whatever. You can't, it'd be something like that, right? Say my man says Charles, right? Y'all are funny. Leave my man Charles Wright alone. You know what I'm going to buy stock in, Catch? Alfred Collins.
Oh, he did it. Somebody had to.
I'm going to buy.
Is that lower?
That's
There's been a lot of buzz about Alfred. His stock's
Yeah.
already gone up in
It's
the last
been
couple
buzz
weeks.
for like a couple of weeks. Now, come on now. Let's just be honest.
Goodbye. I'm not saying it's not a goodbye.
Alfred Collins was left for dead. Like if we're just keeping it a buck, Alfred Collins was left for dead. He was a guy that was going to be the person that everybody else stepped over, just a guy that was just here, just a jag, and nothing more, nothing less. I believe that if the light bulb has sincerely gone off for Alfred Collins, I think he's the best guy on the defensive line. I don't think it's close. I don't, there's not a competition. When I see him at practice and when I see him go through those drills, he looks like an NFL guy. He looks like an NFL player, future NFL player, like everything about Alfred Collins. And if he can go back and be that guy that we saw that flashed as a freshman, got some starts as a sophomore, but if he can be that guy, and then what's interesting is it's like Sark is almost basically just has admitted he's doing the damn thing. Alfred Collins' name came up again today, and I know that the guys behind the scene were just a little bit down on Alfred. Like they just weren't. That wasn't their guy. They didn't recruit him, and there was things that he wasn't doing behind the scenes they didn't love. Now he's doing it. That would be the guy for me because I think the payoff for someone like him, if you can get some plus out of him, I think it makes this defense just even way more, nastier when it's all said and done.
Anwar, I think based on what we've heard in camp, Alfred Collins should probably be a starter on this football team. Maybe like as much as Murphy and Sweat and whomever are like competition and expected to be the starters, feels like Alfred Collins is an MVP of the camp. And if that means anything, and maybe it doesn't, right? I mean, maybe being the MVP of camp is like being the MVP of NFL preseason. Maybe you make the team, but sometimes those dudes get cut too and move to the practice squad. So how high do we think? If I told you that Alfred Collins starts 6 games this year, do you flinch at all?
No. I think the upside of Alfred Collins, I think is higher than just about, anybody on that defensive line. That's just my belief. I'll stand on the table for him, as far as that is concerned. If he puts it together, like if he's putting it together the way that Sark is saying that he's putting it together. Yeah, I mean, Scotty, he looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. You could say all that, but your coach, who, if you believe in your coach, you believe the words he's saying, your coach is saying he's playing like Tarzan at this moment. So if your coach is saying he's playing like Tarzan, again, I'm telling you that everyone in that building was kind of down on previously. If this is what he's doing, then I think to myself, this defensive line is in a plus situation, in a much better world, in a much better place if Alfred Collins is that guy.
I just wanted to address this real quick. Terrence Jones, what up, Terrence? Says just too many weapons for just one to get over 10 touchdowns. Terrence, I'm going to argue a little bit with you on this because the offense that I most think Texas may be a lot like in 2023 is the 2022 Washington Huskies. When I look at what Texas might be, I look at what Washington did last year with Michael Penix Jr. First of all, volume. It felt like Michael Penix was putting up 50 attempts on the regular every week. I watched a lot of Washington games because I felt like I played the over with Washington on Prize Picks a lot. When you look at the Huskies stats, Penix had a 151.3 rating, which that is not great by any stretch of the imagination. But he threw it 554 times in 13 games, which, you know what, out of curiosity, I'm curious, what is that per game? 554 divided by 13. My man was throwing it 42.6 times a game. When you look at if you just look at Ewers in the bowl game last year, with the first time we've seen this team play without Robinson and Bijan and Roshan, they had him throw the ball a lot. I think Quinn's going to throw the ball a lot this year. Last year, Washington had 2 receivers. Wayne Talap, I'm not going to say it. Wayne T, I should know his name, but boy, you start getting me into he's a Papa. Talapapa? He had 11. Cameron Davis had, I'm sorry. I'm looking at rushing touchdowns. My bad. You know what? Skip that. They didn't have double-digit wide receivers with touchdowns. I thought they did. Meh, eggs on my face. But I do
live
think
math and everything.
But I think that Texas is going to have. I think Quinn Ewers is going to throw the ball a lot. I think they're going to have 2 guys close. Now maybe they don't quite get over the hump, but I'm not as instinctively thinking no, Terrence, with the 10 touchdown things. Mainly because I think both Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell are good enough that they can do that. I want to buy Xavier Worthy stock because I still feel like he's underrated. I had somebody in a buy or sell question on Orangebloods yesterday ask me if I was worried about Xavier Worthy. No, I've seen a lot of, you know what? Here's what I know about Xavier Worthy. He's going to be open. I don't know if he's going to have 10 touchdowns, but he's going to be open. There's a big part of me that wants to go Anthony Hill. There's a lot of obvious names. Anthony Hill feels like a guy that should be purchased. In fact, give me Anthony Hill. Give me Anthony Hill. Give me the most important defensive prospect in last year's recruiting class. Give me a guy that is being whispered about as, and if Barry's in the chat, forgive me, Barry. You know that I think your boy is going to have 8 or 9 sacks this season. But there are whispers, and yes, it's just sports. It's not that math is hard. It's that I pulled up the sportsreference.com page of the Husky stats, and the rushing and the receiving are just like merged together. So it's eyeballs can sometimes be hard. The math part I figured out pretty quickly. It was like, oh no, they actually didn't have double-digit guys. My bad. But Anthony Hill, quietly, there are people whispering in camp, Anwar, you know, Anthony Hill might be the scariest pass rusher. He might be the guy that our tackles are having the hardest time against. He's so quick. He brings in explosiveness, but some power and a little bit of everything involved. And he doesn't even know what he's going to do. So how the hell can the offensive lineman figure out what he's going to do? There's a part of me that thinks that Anthony Hill ends up being the solution to both a pass rushing question. Maybe that's not his long-term position, but maybe it is. You know, maybe he's Sergio Kindle 2.0. I don't know. But I'm constantly hearing pass rush with Anthony Hill. And I think they're going to be creative with him. And I think that he's a guy that when this season is over with, finishes second on the team in sacks and might just be Big 12 freshman defensive player of the year. So give me Anthony Hill. I'm standing on the table. I'm getting bold. Matter of fact, put it in ink. Anthony Hill, Big 12 freshman defensive player of the year.
Well, the thing about
still likes his pick the best.
I didn't get that stock cheap. It was, I bought some of the same stock that I think, probably Jason got, or Travis, by the way, taking A.D. Mitchell. But you know what? Anthony Hill was there. He's not a starter yet. I'm going to get it. The stock is as low as it's ever going to be.
Well, the thing about Anthony Hill, the thing about Anthony Hill is he's the pitcher that throws 95 on the gun, and he's got the heat. Now you just don't know if you don't have the curve. He doesn't have some of the slider. He doesn't have the breaking ball. but he's got the heat. And so at that point, you say, you know what? All right, well, guess what? You'll just be our closer for right now and just come in the final. And then when you work up to it, absolutely. But you got to play, like, because if you're throwing 95, 98 on the gun, you've got to be in the game. That's what he is. He's the guy that can throw the fastball. He's the guy that absolutely is going to get done. He's the guy that's going to get to the quarterback affected. And at that point, you just work and fine tune the other things that, he may not have. But at the end of the day, you're like, he's got enough to be on the field. So I'm fine with that. I mean, honestly, Catch, we could have done a draft. And that's probably what we should have done.
We should have done the draft today.
Hey, we got a week. We got next week.
I was going to say, we still got 12 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
We still have time to do the draft. Matter of fact, we need Travis and Al. Now, having 5 people in the draft spread out the talent a little bit more. If we each get 5, it'll spread it out a little bit. You won't have these stacked teams like my championship draft had from a year ago.
Oh, still can't believe that. Yeah.
I did that just for you, Jason, and I knew.
Hey, you dumbass voters cost me a free steak dinner.
Who's the first pick? I'm just curious. Everybody's got the first pick in a Longhorn draft.
Well, that's tough because the way we did it last year. It's about
yes,
that, like I got Kelvin Banks with my first pick, and I got him really low, which set me up for the rest of my draft. But
I think I spent a lot of money on Xavier Worthy, or
Yeah,
I had Bijan.
There's different ways to tackle it. Do you want to spend all your money up front, or do you want to buy low in that first round and then kind of save and maybe get better value in the end? So it's hard to say. It's a different ways to.
That's true. We did the auction as opposed to just a pure draft. Fellas, as we start to wrap things up, why don't we do this? Guys, you got Jason right here. If you've got – see, now, Mike, I don't know that for sure. I don't know this for sure. I'm just saying that I've got 7 guys that I would rank ahead of him. And I think Quinn is in a group of guys that you would have a discussion on, just, I don't know. But it's not that he's not, but I don't know for sure. I'd have to really think about it. You have to remember, I did one of these ranking the Texas players way back early in the offseason, and I ranked him like 17th or something like that, partly because you had to go off what happened a year ago. But if you got your recruiting questions,
I wish we had more time. I wish we had more time. I wish we had more time. Because so clearly, let's just put it out here on the table, right? So clearly I've been on the Quinn Ewers fan club thing, president, since last season, even when the conversation we were having as relates to Hudson Card, all right? So let me put myself out there so we're for full transparency is concerned. Now, the thing that throws me off about you, Ketchum, is that all I hear is 5 stars mean this and 5 stars mean that, and how effective you're. Like I've got this thing memorized as to 5 stars when it comes to NFL players and NFL talent. So I get lost when you're like, maybe about Quinn. We have to see. I'm like, your numbers will tell you. You beat it into us how 5 stars always hit these other levels that are above just the norm. And then we get suspended disbelief as relates to a 5-star and Quinn Ewers. I wish we had more time.
I think you're confusing conversation pieces because I think Quinn Ewers is going to be an NFL quarterback. I think there's a really good chance he's going to be a first-round pick in next year's NFL draft. If we're having a conversation about who on the team has the highest NFL upside, and Quinn's definitely in the top 5. I mean, he's likely going to be a first-round draft pick. So if we're having that conversation, it's him, it's Kelvin Banks, it's Arch. I don't know. I don't know who else I would even include in that stratosphere at this point. But Arch wasn't. Look, let me put it to you like this, Anwar. I'll count them out. Do you think that Quinn as a quarterback, it's not apples to apples. It's going to be apples to other fruit. Do you think he's better than Xavier Worthy?
As far as value is concerned?
No, as a football player, at the quarterback, is he as good at quarterback as Xavier Worthy is at wide receiver?
I mean, if you're talking about value, not at this moment, sure.
Xavier Worthy, second team AP All-American today.
Yes.
Do you think he's better than Jatavion Sanders?
I mean, both of those guys are projected early first round picks. So, well, I should have the opportunity to think out. I'm not just going to say anything to say it.
Ignore my body language. I'm listening.
I'm talking it out. So, Jatavion, he's considered probably the second best tight end in the country. So, okay, no.
Is he better than Kelvin Banks?
Of course not, as far as that's concerned.
Is he better than Jalen Ford?
No, Jalen Ford is a Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year going into the season.
Is he better than Jahdae Barron?
I don't know about that.
He hasn't been. Would you agree that he has not been better than Jahdae Barron up until this point?
I mean, Jade's been really good and effective. I mean, this defense didn't have what who led the team in interceptions. And that's not like this defense known as a bunch of ball hawks, at least in the DB category. And I'd have to go, was Jade like an honorable mention last season or something like that with the All Big 12? I don't even know where he was. I know he wasn't first or second. So I would say
he wasn't a quarterback with a 130 something quarterback rating.
I don't think he was a DB with 4 interceptions either.
Touche.
And
so that's a no?
And he was injured. That 130 quarterback rating, a lot of that was after his injury.
I mean, okay. I know this. The thing that just bothers me about Quinn, I haven't had anybody in practice that's watched a practice call me up and say, Quinn Ewers is one of our best players. That, man, he killed it today. And I think Jason would point out, well, we haven't heard that about Jatavion Sanders either in camp. Like, there have been some guys that nobody really raves about Kelvin Banks every single day. We kind of know how good he is. Jalen Ford doesn't get raved about every single day in practice, but he's the quarterback. And everybody wants to rave about him. We're all dying to rave about the quarterback. And, whether it's drops, whether it is whatever it is, I don't know that I think the player that Quinn is at the end of the season is going to be completely different than the quarterback at the start of the season. But I still think there's evolution and development taking place. I don't know. I'd probably sneak him into the back end of my top 10 because I don't know who I would definitively rank above him once we get through like Barron. I would rank Ryan Watts ahead of him. I'd rank A.D. Mitchell ahead of him at this point. Once we get beyond there, though, and yes, Michael's right. Alex is still screaming at me because in our show on House Divided, when this conversation came up, he was basically, because the quarterback position is so valuable, that Alex was like, Quinn Ewers is the best player on the team. But if we're talking about the conversation that we're having, he would agree with me to some extent. It was convoluted and a bit of a mess, and I may have yelled at Alex a little bit. Smidge, not really yelled. I was animated, but I don't know. Like, I here's my thing. I just can't definitively say it. I can't 1000% say he's that good. If he is, this team will win a Big 12 championship, but I still don't know that.
But you will say, what you typically say is 5 stars produce at a higher level. So that's what this. I don't feel like I'm jumbling 2 different conversations. What I'm saying is, you say rankings are important, and you usually give us the evidence to show why you believe rankings are important.
I don't get what point you're making, though, because
the point is, if Quinn Ewers is a 5-star, his success rate and hit rate should be at a point where you say he's going to do what typical 5 stars do.
Yeah, he's going to get drafted. That's what I always talk about with 5 stars.
But then he's going to have a hell of a season if he gets drafted.
We've had this argument. That's what I said on Warren. you guys, I don't remember if you were part of it, but Alex and Ketch were like, no, he could get drafted, basically just have a pretty mediocre season. So they don't always, down at the quarterback position, they don't always.
I mean, he sucked for large stretches of the season last year. He didn't get to a quarterback rating of 130-ish by accident.
But I'll say this. He's top 10 players on this team. Dude, you're crazy if you don't put him in the top 10. So this will go on for 2 hours. We don't have 2 more hours.
Of the 7 guys that I mentioned, Jason, was there anybody that you disagreed with?
You'd have to run the 7 by
Mitchell,
huh?
Mitchell, Worthy, Sanders, Banks, Ford, Watts, and Barron.
When I factor in positional value, those last 3, I would take Quinn over him.
So you think he's a better football player than Jalen Ford?
Ford wasn't the last 3, and I think he was the fourth.
The last 3 were the defensive guys. First 4 were offensive.
Barron, who was it? Barron, Watts.
Watts, and Ford.
I'd take him over Barron. I'd take him over Watts. Probably not Ford, although I don't think Ford duplicates this year what he did last year with all the interceptions and things. Okay. Yeah, I'd take him over Barron.
We all have a different way. You just said you would take him.
Rank him over. Whatever, rank him.
I tell you what, man, I hope you guys are right. I would love for end of October for him to be a Heisman candidate. I do. Trust me. I want the kid to blow up. It'll be the best thing that we could have happen to us is him to be sensational. And then we just ride the coattails of an out of this world quarterback season. He might get there. I just don't think when the season starts, that's what we're going to see. I don't think he goes into Alabama, and I don't think this offense at this point is scoring 30 in that game. That's a lot about Alabama, but I don't think we're talking about one of the best offenses in college football to start the season. But I do think by the end of the year, by the midway point in the year, by October, maybe we're there. But one of the best offenses in the country doesn't get controlled all camp long by a Texas defense that does still have some questions. We have questions about linebacker. We've got questions about pass rush. There are questions about this defense, and yet, they've been the better of the 2 units. If Quinn was that good, at least one time this month, somebody goes, God damn, Quinn Ewers was out of this world today.
One person I talked about these scrimmages, though, said, hey, these defenses, they've seen it all. They know what's coming. It's a little different when he's facing an Alabama that hasn't seen, they're going to pull out new.
You know who they don't say that about? Caleb Williams at USC. They don't go, you know what? The offense
Lincoln Riley's got so many tricks up
today.
Lincoln Riley's got so many tricks up his sleeves. He can throw a million out of practice, and he still has a million more for games.
Poor Drake May. He just can't do anything against that North Carolina defense. They know the plays. I'm just saying. I don't.
Hey, there was a super chat. Yes, thank you. Not to hijack, but I got to get going here pretty soon.
No, so, by all means.
Likelihood of getting 3 out of 4 5-stars. Ryan Wingo, Kobe Black, Baker, the offensive line, and gosh, my eyes checked in. Dominic McKinley, likelihood of getting them all. How many fingers? Oh, yeah, Elmer. All right.
Yeah.
So likelihood of getting 3 out of 4, I think it's really high. South end zone queen. I think Texas gets, if I'm betting right now, I think they get Black, Baker, and McKinley. Last week I had all 3 of those guys over 50%, in some cases well over 50% on my recruiting board. So I'm predicting Texas, as it stands right now, to get Black, Baker, and McKinley. I would say give myself a little wiggle room, obviously, there, because there's movement that can happen. I'd say 75% chance of that happening, I think. I'll go 70%, let's say. Likelihood of getting all 4 of them.
Careful with your percentages. You're a little
exactly.
85?
No. Hey, that number is forever blacked out. Likelihood of getting all 4 of them, if you throw Wingo in there, I've got Missouri, and I might be wrong on this, but I've got Missouri right now as a slight favorite over Texas. And I know there's confidence in Austin, but there's also confidence on the Missouri side. There's some NIL things in play there. But I think if Wingo waits, he might decide a little earlier. But if he waits, I think Texas ends up winning out there. I think Texas gets all 4 of them. So I think, I'll say 50% chance that Texas gets all 4 of them. But I think there's a really good chance, certainly over 50, that Texas gets 3 out of 4.
Real quick, not a super chat question, but the finishing touches. Anwar is not here to defend himself. Paul says, Catch, you're literally a stats guy. You're acting like freshman quarterbacks don't improve, let alone a talent like Quinn. Well, first of all, Paul, that is a complete misrepresentation of what I've said about Quinn Ewers. I've said I think he throws for nearly 4,000 yards this year if he plays 12 games. I think he's going to be a better player. I think I'm not a stats guy. I'm a reality guy. What has happened and what are people seeing?
We're ranking them as where they are now. If you think he throws for 4,000 yards, he's got to be in your top 10 players on this team, dude.
Well,
we're not
4,000
ranking
yards.
You're talking about last year. We're not ranking them on last year's performance.
Well, I'm looking at Michael Penix, and Michael Penix threw for 4,641 yards last year,
and didn't he
but
lead
he
the
only had a
country?
151 quarterback rating.
Well,
So I think Ewers is going to throw the ball 40 times a game this year. And maybe it won't quite average. So what did I say?
I'll take that bet. Average of 40 passes per game.
He threw it 47 in the bowl game. He threw it nearly 50 times at Oklahoma State. This is and I don't trust that this team's going to run the ball really, really well. So I think they're going to be a pass dominant team. Whether the efficiency is there, I think passing yards is a little bit of a fool's gold in that if I told you Michael Penix's passing yards, you would have thought, oh my God, that guy should have gone to the NFL draft. His efficiency wasn't great. He still turned the ball over a little bit too much. But I'll say this. I was the guy last year that when Anwar was saying Quinn Ewers is never going to have a bad game at Texas ever again, I was the one saying he's a freshman. There will be days when it just doesn't happen for him, and Texas just has to kind of survive the roller coaster of what that is to be a young quarterback. This year, I expect him to be much better. The question is, what does that mean? What does much better mean?
If he throws for 4,000 yards, that's 333 yards a game.
Not over 14 games.
Okay, over 14.
285.
It's how much?
It's 285 over 14 games.
286, 285.7. Yeah, that's pretty damn good over 14 games. That means they made the Big 12 championship and obviously played in a bowl.
I'm picking this team to go to the Big 12 championship.
Yeah. I mean, that's a quarterback you have to have when you're factoring positional value. I'm with Alex.
At the end of the season, I think he's there. I don't think he's there now. I think this is the kind of thing that has to happen on the field in games. And all of the guys that I'm ranking ahead of him have all been better in games.
Yeah, in the past, dude. We're ranking in our conversation here, but we're ranking them on how we're projecting the season. We don't give a shit about what happened last year. No, last year he wasn't in the top 10. You got to throw that away. How are you ranking after 2 weeks of fall camp as things stand today? He's top 10. So I've got like 5 minutes. So
if you think, last question and we'll wrap it up. If we're doing on a 1 to 10 scale and we say 5 is average, 6 is slightly above average, 7 is like honorable mention all Big 12, 8 is first team all Big 12, 9 is all American, 10 is retire the number, put up a statue.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you have Quinn Ewers right now?
First team all Big 12. He's going to put up big numbers. There aren't a lot of great quarterbacks.
You think he's an 8?
I think he's an 8. He's going to 7.5 to 8. You know, I think he's going to put up big numbers. I think they're going to have to throw the ball more because of the running game. He's got great weapons around him. He's above a 7, approaching an 8 for me. Yeah.
Has he been an 8 in camp?
No, he hasn't been in camp. To your point, no. But I don't think they're throwing everything on the table at camp either.
Wasn't an 8 on the field last year. Not an 8 in camp either.
He definitely flashed 8. He flashed 8s in Alabama. He flashed an 8 in OU.
Oh, he's flashed a 2 against
But
Baylor.
I'm saying he's put it on tape that's what he's capable of, and
no doubt
against good defensive teams.
What number would you put him at? today?
I don't know where he is today. I don't know. He
I'm
better be
going
an
to your
8.
head, pick a number.
That's
He
the
better
fun of
be
it,
an
Kev.
8 really damn quick. But if right now, yeah, I think I lean more towards an 8 now than I do a 6 or anything like that. I think he's probably already one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, if not the best.
Maybe, but we ain't seeing it in camp.
Well, we haven't seen anything in camp.
Anwar went with a 7. I was right at about a 7.
He's not turning the ball over. I mean, I think he had
I'll
pick.
split the difference and say 7.5.
Has there been a day in camp when anybody has come out and said, God damn, Quinn Ewers was easily the best quarterback in the Big 12 today?
Maybe you got the wrong birdies.
That's not the kind of rhetoric people use. They just say, "Hey, it was fantastic today," or whatever. But
anybody come close to that?
I've been told he's had pretty good performances and he was clean with the ball. And I mean, but no, it hasn't been like people just raving about him. They're talking about Arch. All anybody wanted to talk about was Arch Manning's 70-yard run. And you know,
if you ask people, they'll say Arch is an 8.5. Okay, guys, we got to go. Let's do this. Anybody got a parting statement? I'm good. I dominated the Quinn Ewers thing at the end, so I don't need to say any other words. Anybody got any final comments?
You know what I do real quick? I know if I were going to buy penny stock, by the way, it's going to be Jonathan Brooks. I know we're down on the running game, and hell, I just went through my whole concern about the short yardage running game. But that dude still has it. I think he's going to be the starter. I know the talk is about Baxter right now. My money's still on Brooks to be.
Travis, if we were going to do a second pick in that little exercise we're doing, that's who I was going to pick too. So I agree with you.
Oh, like two little love.
Isn't that cute?
Jason, any final thought?
No, just dropped my son off at college this weekend. It was a blessing and a disaster at the same time. I'm going to probably write about that in my column. I don't even know if
I can't wait for that.
Yeah, so I'm still recovering to be honest, but yeah, good luck to my son Zachary. Love him and good to be home. I'll say that. So
I don't really have a parting shot other than to say stay tuned. We'll be making a new announcement on the 3:00 show for tomorrow, and then like the next, I don't know, I'll figure it out maybe tomorrow morning, but that announcement will be coming. So the live content all day long as you guys are growing to expect here on Orangebloods Live. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that, notifications, all those things. For myself, for Anwar, I don't know where he went. Like, did he say he had to go somewhere?
Do a radio show or something, or something.
Because earlier he was like, yeah, let's go for like an hour and 20 minutes. And then like right after an hour and 20 minutes, he was gone. For Jason, for Travis, guys, we enjoyed it. It's been too long since we've done a Modcast. We will pick them up again on the regular. So stay tuned for when the official announcement of when we'll be doing this on a weekly basis. But we know that you guys love the Modcast. For all of us, thanks for hanging out with us on a Monday. We do appreciate it. Barring something unforeseen happening, we'll see you tomorrow.